in high school who used to go home every week with a number 3, talking in class, disturbing the class. But thank God he has taught me balance, and he has taught me how to manage the use of my voice. And journalism is something that I've always wanted to do, particularly broadcast television, from watching ABS back in the day and seeing the news anchors like Charmaine Hackett read the news. So I always wanted to be in television. So I had the gift of gab, but thank the Lord that he has put a bit and bridle on my mouth and has taught me how to use my voice to educate and not just to entertain. So there was a point in my life when I wanted to do this show called Overcomer, because I thought that life had taught me so many things after going through divorce and so many other challenges that I thought that, were thrown at me. But there was still this still small voice asking me, what have you really overcome? What have you really overcome? How can you call yourself an overcomer? So you think that because, some negatives happened in your life and it knocked you down, you think you're really authorized to speak on who is an overcomer? And of course I said, yes, of course. I believe that I've overcome so many things. People can learn a lot from me. And it wasn't until last year, February of 2024, when the true test of an overcomer would really end up on my doorstep. Because as manager of the Calvin Ayre Foundation, we, as Sister Donnelly would have mentioned earlier, we receive requests for all types of donations, whether it's for, financials, for education, for sports, and a lot of it has to do with medical emergencies. And we've helped very many people. And I sit at my desk and I look at the emails and the hard copies of people asking for assistance. And a lot of it was about cancer. Never thinking that one day I would be looking at my own documents on my desk. And that was when the true test of the overcomer, of my overcoming the negative barriers, came into being. So I think quite a few people might have seen my story on Inspire, which is a show that I produce for the Calvin Ayre Foundation about my story. But it all came about with me coming out of the shower and lotioning my skin. I was not even doing a check. I was 48 at the time. I was not even doing a self-check, and I ought to have been doing a self-check at that age. And that was the first time I'd ever done a mammogram as well. So you know that throughout this entire story, I'm going to be admonishing our women to do our own self-checks and to also make sure that we do our annuals. But before we get there, so I came out of the shower one evening in 2023, around June of 2023. And I felt this lump in my breast. Now, as far as I'm concerned, one evening, it wasn't there. And then the next evening, there it was. And I tell the story of my brain beginning to expand and feeling like if the house couldn't contain how big my brain was swelling. And after I processed it for a little bit, I called my OBGYN, who told me to come the next day to, do some checks. And after I was done talking to him, I jumped into the vehicle and I drove to a beach. And I had this long talk with God. And I was, of course, going worst case scenario. And I said to him, now what you gonna put me in? And what you really want out of my life now? What is this? So I already started catastrophizing. And that same fear that Minister Winspeare spoke about, that the psalmist was saying, don't be afraid, we're humans. The first thing you think about when you find a mass in your breast, or anybody who has had any issues, the first thing you do is you catastrophize. You start to think worst case scenario. So the very next day, after I had that talk with God, and I said to him, look, whatever it is, I'm going to have to go through this, because the first thing first people I thought about was Joshua and Jordan. Those are my children. And of course, my mom, who also lives with me. So the very next day, went to Dr. Winter, did an ultrasound, and realized, okay, it's a cyst. I breathed a sigh of relief, because normally every breast cancer that I've heard about, people always find like this mass, and it had jagged edges. It doesn't move, but this was moving, and I started to kind of take my fear down a notch. Then he asked me to go do a mammogram, and I went and did the mammogram, and nothing showed up on the mammogram. So I thought, yes, so that is confirmation that everything is fine. But he said to me, Jay, because of your age, let's do a biopsy, and let's just rule out everything. And I pushed that biopsy surgery back months. The first time I went in, the doctor who was supposed to do the surgery got called away on an emergency. So I took off my cap and gown and my booties, and I took off out of there, because I was like, oh, that has to be a sign that everything is fine. I moved it again months after. I moved it to Christmas, and then I said, okay, let me do it in January. Eventually, he said, Jamilla, you have to make a date. And so we settled on February 13th of 2024. Now, mind you, I found out about this in June of 2023, and I pushed this surgery all the way into 2024, and Dr. Winter was not having any more of that. So he gave me an ultimatum, and we did that surgery. Of course, I went on medical leave. And then I'm sitting there getting haunted, because I don't like sitting down and not doing anything. They put me on sick leave for 3 weeks. And after the second week, I asked HR, look, can I start working from home, because I'm getting stir crazy. I want to do things. I don't like sitting around. About the time I asked HR if I could work from home, I got a visit from my OBGYN, and he's his family. So I thought he was just coming to do a family visit. And after asking the children to go into the bedroom so that we could have big people talk, my sister, who was there as well, said to me, Andre has something that he needs to say to you. And that was when bells went off, and I thought, oh boy, what's going on here? And the words that came out of his mouth were, Jay, we got back the results, and it's not what we expected. Now you can imagine how I felt automatically numb. And those words just split my life in two. And in that moment, I wasn't a coach, a communicator, or a public figure. I was simply a woman who instantly became afraid, confused, and started to try to find something in my brain to hold on to, because the fear was just more than me. Water more than flour, as we say. The fear was more than me. But if there's anything that I've learned, it's this. Out of all of this, now I'm looking back, and I'm realizing that sometimes life breaks you open, not to destroy you, but to awaken you. And we say we have faith, but we don't have faith until the moment comes where that's all you can have. That you can only rely on that faith that we go in church and we sing and raise our hands about. And we declare hallelujah, and we go up to the altar, and we fall prostrate, I beg your pardon. And all of those things came back to me. It's that one faith coupled with the reasons why you have to be strong. So my children were the obvious whys, as WHY. They were my whys. The reason why I wanted to survive this. The one positive thing when my OBGYN gave me the news, he said, but after he said, it's not what we expected, there was a but. And the but was, when they did the biopsy, everything was removed and the margins were clear. So there was no obvious spread. However, the fact that cancer was found in the body, the protocol is chemotherapy and followed by radiation. So I had to process all of that, because when you hear about chemo and radiation, all you think about is people being sick for months, incapacitated. You know, I have observed my mentor, my late mentor and friend, Keva Margetson, when she was going through chemotherapy for a different type of cancer. And what I saw was scary. What I saw was a woman that I loved and I admired and wanted to be so much like. And when cancer took her, I could not believe, because how can somebody so vibrant, how can somebody so strong and positive just be lost like that to the big C, as we call it? So that was the beginning of my journey, and my journey of overcoming the negativity that comes with it. So of course, I had a lot of emotional turmoil, and that one in the mind. The battlefield is definitely in the mind. So fear was a constant. What if I don't do well during the chemotherapy? Anxiety was my constant shadow. And I think this particular illness and this journey, I won't call it an ordeal anymore, I used to call it my ordeal, exacerbated a lot of anxieties that I would have had from childhood. It just brought everything to the forefront. So depression and anxiety were my constant shadows. But I think God has a great sense of humor, and he blessed me with one. So I was able to laugh at myself. I was able to shave my head before the chemo took my hair. And I'd stand up in the mirror and I could not believe who was looking back at me. And because of my sense of humor and my children's sense of humor, you know, they'd walk around the house and cuff me in my bald head, and we would have a good laugh about it. And thankfully, I didn't get sick. I didn't vomit. I didn't have the diarrhea and the other types of sicknesses that comes with undergoing chemotherapy. What I did have was side effects from the pills they gave me to combat the side effects from the chemo. There were muscle spasms, there were headaches, and further into my treatment, I developed what is called neuropathy, which is nerve damage in my legs, and had to go on a next set of pills to help with the pain from the neuropathy. So it was indeed an ordeal, but a journey that definitely taught me what an overcomer really, really is. And there were times when I cried in the shower, moments when I smiled in public, because obviously it is my job to be in the media and to represent my company. And even while I was going through, I didn't slow all the way down, because that would drive me completely crazy if I didn't do some work at home, if I didn't check in with my team, if I didn't have a say in something, I wouldn't feel as if I was being myself. And I think that too is what helped me through. What I also thank God for is my team, my family, my work family, and especially my children. They're now 13 and 16, and they were so mature after I would have given them the news. And I gave it to them as positively as I could have, because that is my default mindset. I am a consummate optimist. And I always find a way to reframe something, so much so that when I told my children that cancer was found in the cyst, but everything was removed, my daughter said, so Mom, you mean that God allowed them to find the cancer inside the cyst and everything was removed? And I said, yes. And she was just marveling at this because to her it felt like a miracle. My son, who's older, obviously he was watching me cross-eyed and he was kind of like processing a little bit. And he said, well, if you're okay, then why do you have to do the chemotherapy and the radiation? And I said to him, standard protocol, I have to go through it because cancer was found in my body. And then he went down the rabbit hole of, but why does God have to give you another challenge? Doesn't he think you're strong enough? Why we have to go through this again? You know, he went back into when he was younger and his dad and I separated and we moved out and went on our own and he went down the rabbit hole and I just had to allow him to process. And he got up and he was angry. He got up, he walked out the room, slammed the door, and maybe about an hour or so he came back in and then he said, Mom, I just needed to think about it. I needed to, you know, process this a little bit. I'm sorry if I was upset, but and then we spoke about it a little bit more. My mom, all of us prayed. Then my family sprang into action. My support group, my sisters, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, my best friend, all my family rallied. And so that was the support system that helped me to go through. So I started chemotherapy in April of 2024, and I completed it October 2nd, 2024. So it's been a year since my last chemotherapy. And then after that, I would have had to travel to Colombia in January of this year. And I returned in March after doing my radiation protocol. I did my 3-month check last week, and I've been declared cancer-free. I still have to continue doing my mammograms. And of course, it's not just limited to breast cancer. It's, you know, you also have to do your pap smears and all the other tests to rule out any other type of cancer. Chemotherapy threw me into early menopause. So I am going to be 50 in the coming weeks on November 9th. And I'm already in menopause, whereas some of my friends are still in perimenopause. Some are heading into menopause, and I am, boom, I've been thrown into early menopause. So it's been a wild ride, but I don't regret it. Scripture says it is good that I was afflicted, and I don't know that I could have said that at the time when I was going through. I knew I had to remain positive. I knew that I had to lean on God and on my support system that he had blessed me with. But now I can understand why I went through what I did, simply because I have a voice and I have a platform. And there are many people who listen to my voice, who I can encourage, who I can just be a coach to or a listening ear because I have gone through it. So I'm not just speaking off the top of my head or having empathy and going, okay, I understand. You know, sometimes when we're talking to people and you can say, I can just imagine, oh, I understand. And you really don't understand. You're just empathizing. You're putting yourself in that person's shoe. But having lived it and having been given the awesome second chance, I call it a second chance or second win, you know, when you're running a race and you're past the threshold where you've passed exhaustion, and then all of a sudden you get this extra surge of energy. It's called second wind. Well, I think I've gotten my second wind. And so I know I'm a chatterbox, I know I'm a talker, but now it's even more important that what I say makes sense, is encouraging. You know, it's not any negativity. Everything that comes out of my mouth now has to be uplifting. So just going back a little bit to the emotional and the mental battle, that was the most difficult, the battlefield of the mind. And then asking God, why me? And then I started to reframe that and to ask, what is it trying to teach me? And I think that was when I realized that I was not a victim. I was a student of life, and I feel like I was learning resilience and learning patience, and even more so, learning how to surrender, because I don't know about any of you, but if you're a type A personality or a woman who likes to get things done, and sometimes we don't like to ask anybody for help, that really taught me how to surrender and to depend on my support system, because I'm always the one that people call on. I'm always the one who wants to help or to put peace or to put, to assist with any difficult situation, especially where I sit at the Calvin Foundation. Very many people write into us asking for help. And sometimes it's not just about the request for donation. It's sometimes picking up the phone and speaking to that person. And I find myself mentoring them, coaching them, or encouraging them through whatever they're going through. And so I think this all happened for me to be even more in love with humanity and to really know how it feels to help. And not just that, when I went to Colombia, there were quite a few Antiguans down there for different cancers at Clinica in Banaco. And there was a nice little cohesive unit, an Antiguan unit, and a couple of Kitishans and a couple of the islands. We banded together and we were able to share and encourage each other. So having had that experience as well, when people write into us and say that they need to go to Colombia, they're able to ask me about my experience because I was boots on the ground there, so I'm speaking from experience. And now I feel as if I have an even stronger purpose on earth, because I used to ask the Lord, what is my purpose? Yeah, I know what my purpose is. My purpose is to chat. My purpose is to host things and to educate. And now I am more than that, because God has opened my mouth. Holy Spirit has opened my mouth to encourage and to inspire. So I think cancer also changes how you treat people. And it gives you more of a sense of humanity, because there are so many people going through. When I was doing chemotherapy at the Celeste Bird Medical Center, there were a few people who would come in for treatment, and then the next thing you hear, they're no longer there. And you're asking, hey, where's so-and-so? She didn't come for treatment today. And then you're made to understand that they didn't make it. And you'd see, people crying, or in various stages of their chemotherapy, people getting up and going to the bathroom and having to vomit because they're not feeling well during the treatment. Some people they can't find the veins to put in the catheter because the chemotherapy has dried up your veins. I actually had a port installed in my chest. It's called a chemo port, that you could just stick the needle in without having to, go into your veins. And then that worked once. So I did the surgery to put it in. Then it stopped working. Had to do emergency surgery to remove it because it malfunctioned. Something got pulled out of the tube, got pulled out of the catheter, and I had to do emergency surgery to remove it. They asked me if I wanted to put it back in. I was like, no, I'm not doing any more surgery. You're not cutting me anymore. So there was so much that you observed. Besides me going through what I was going through, there were other people who I felt had it worse than I did. There were people who had to do double mastectomies, remove the breast, obviously, that's what mastectomy is. There are people who had to have draining tubes because their situation was, more advanced than mine. And I was able to see humanity. Not that I've never seen it before, because I'm very in tune with with people's struggles. I'm very in tuned with, what people are going through, but this was such an eye-opener for me. So now I don't feel like I'm a survivor. Just a survivor or a fighter. I feel as if I am Jamilla, a woman, rebuilding myself from the inside out. And then, of course, there's the spiritual, which I felt was the most profound. All of us have some level of spirituality. All of us here are Christians. Some of us were born into it. Some of us shifted churches. Some of us got baptized in Pentecostal, and some of us got baptized as babies. But all of us believe in the one true God. And I feel that this journey stripped any doubt that I had about who God really was. So it was not just a medical thing, it was also a spiritual thing. And I think for me, I had to connect with my higher self, because if he lives inside of me, then he is in me, and that is my higher self. And that still small voice inside of me that told me, you are not your diagnosis. You are not your fear. You are light. You have a purpose, and you are purpose. And I felt like this is what I'm going to do. So when Sister Donnelly asked me to come on, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I've had to turn down quite a few, because I can't be in, all places at once. I've done a couple of recordings because I can't be in certain events in person. But I feel like if I've now been given the platform, not just about cancer, but about who God is and what he has done for me. So, of course, I'm meditating, I'm praying, I'm journaling, and speaking affirmations over myself, speaking scripture over myself. And that was almost like a whole transformation, a rebranding, as we say in marketing, repackaging and rebranding, because I felt like if I went through fire and I came out as pure gold. So the physical as well, as I would have said, it took a toll on me up until yesterday. Today, I'm doing my exercises, because after the radiation on my right breast, which is where the lump was, and under my arm, it makes your muscles tight. You don't have full range of motion. So I'm always in the gym. So now it's a little bit more difficult because it's tender. I still feel a little bit out of sorts, but slowly I'm getting back to myself. There are very many things I would have had to do. I had to cut some things out of my diet, and not to be absolutely radical, but things like sugar and processed foods, those are things that I definitely had to remove. Not to say that I don't still have a little bit, everything in moderation, but there are some things that you definitely have to change about yourself and your diet after you would have had such a traumatic experience. And so I began being more in tune with my body. There are times when I feel like, okay, I haven't gone to the gym 3 times this week. I really need to do better. And then my body is saying to me, you are tired. Your brain is going. The menopause now is giving you insomnia. You need to drink some chamomile and go to your bed. So we have to listen to our bodies. And I actually wanted to get back into the gym full time too quickly. I wanted to start back and rebuild and show the superwoman and everything. And then I just got tired, miserable. And thank God for my work family and my team at Air Media and the Calvin Air Foundation, that they were able to run the show without me. As a matter of fact, my left hand, right hand, her name is Patrice Jacobs. She said to me, listen, man, don't come in today. Go and go to your bed. We don't need you in no meeting. We will update you on what we're doing. She's Jamaican, so I'm doing the accent. So I've gotten put in my place many a time by people who know that I just can't keep still. And so there's still that part of me that needs to slow down. But little by little, I've been transforming and slowing down a little bit more. And I would have mentioned that I couldn't have done it alone. The angels, as I call them, at the Celeste Bird Medical Center, who assisted me through my chemo journey, and those in Cali, Colombia, at Clinica in Banaco, the nurses and my oncologist, Dr. Hannibal Yazigi, they walked me through this entire process. And I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that I had a great experience. Does anybody have a great experience during chemotherapy and radiation? But I think because of the positive mindset and that strong desire to be well for my children, and to come back out and encourage and inspire, I think that is what drove me. As a matter of fact, I went to Epicurean this evening, and the cashier said to me, she said, you don't look like what you went through. Every time I see you, I said, but this girl, when she was going through, and she used to come in with the caps, because I used to wear caps all the time with my bald head. And she said, you never changed your mannerism. You were always smiling. And I said, well, that is the core personality that God has blessed me with. But it's not that I've never cried. It's not that I wasn't afraid. It's not that I wasn't depressed. But thankfully that I was blessed with a default of great humor, learning to laugh at myself, and just trusting for the next outcome, because I don't think, for me alone, I don't think I would have made it without my spiritual foundation. So here's what this whole journey taught me, that healing begins in the mind before it manifests in the body. And the way we speak to ourselves matter. Fear and faith cannot occupy the same space. And that took me a long time. Every now and again, it creeps back in. We're humans. Every now and again, it creeps back in. But then I tell myself, you have actuals. Look at all the times that God has brought you through something, and you always end up better for it. So I have actuals. So fear and faith cannot occupy the same space. And I chose to have faith even when I didn't feel brave. I used to say a long time ago, when people ask me, Jamilla, when you go on stage, you're not nervous? How you just go on the stage and just hold the mic? And I said, yes, I am. I am nervous, but I do it afraid. And when I open my mouth, something must make sense. You are not defined by what breaks you, but what you build after. And I chose to build, or to rebuild, on a more solid foundation after this journey. I am not defined by what tried to break me. I'm not defined by divorce. I'm not defined by cancer. My scars, to me, are proof that pain can be transformed into power. And gratitude is medicine. Every sunrise, every laugh, every small victory, celebrate it. Celebrate it. My son made house captain. I was house captain back in the day when I used to run track. I celebrated that. My daughter, they both play football. So she went off to Trinidad to represent Antigua and Barbuda. We celebrated that. She won Optimus Petite last year. My son is going to play in Division 1. Everything we celebrate. He got an 80 for math. I thought he could have done better, but we celebrate that. So everything. And my mom is still with me. My mom is going to be 73, and she's still with me. She helps me with the children. She helps me with the run up and down. And she herself had her own health scare, and God brought her full circle as well. So today I humbly accept, I'm just going to wrap up now. I humbly accept my new title as survivor. But it doesn't mean that the journey is over. Obviously, I'm still going to have to do all my checks constantly. Survivorship comes with its own challenges, you know, the fatigue, the fear, of course, the crazy hormones now because I'm in brand spanking new menopause. But it comes with something far greater, clarity. I am clear on who I am, why I'm here. I am clear that I want to be here for many, many, many more years. And I've learned to say no to what drains me and yes to what nourishes me. I've learned that strength doesn't always have to be loud. You know, it's a quiet decision to show up for life, to show up for your family, to show up for those who are near and dear to you. And I've made it my mission to turn my survival story into service and to use my platform and my voice and my story to empower others to fight, to heal, and to continue to do the work. So when I look back, I don't see the pain first. I see the purpose. And if my journey can remind even one person that healing is possible, then every tear that I shed, every scar that I got through this journey, even the sleepless nights when I can't sleep because I'm going through insomnia, all of it is worth it. And so I thank you for listening to me. I hope I didn't sound like I was rambling. This is the first time that I'm speaking, and I feel like there's a lump in my throat. I've not cried in public about this whole thing, but thank you very, very much for listening. And I pray that you've been blessed under the sound of my voice. Thank you.